Brill and the Dragators, Book 1 in the Exitorn Adventures, by Peggy Downing, illustrated by Anne Feza. Chapter 1, The Test. The morning sun began to burn off the misty clouds from the jagged mountains surrounding the little town of Grebbing. Brill, who had been looking for a lost lamb since dawn, stopped as he heard a faint bleating.
"Curly, is that you?"
he shouted. Brill ran toward the sound and pulled the bleeding lamb from the prickly bush. Cuddling the trembling animal close to him, he hurried home. As he opened the gate to the field, his mother called, "Brill, you'll be late for school."
"I found Curly,"
he called. He ran to the doorway of the small stone cottage and handed the lamb to his mother.
"Can you pull the prickles from her wool? I have to hurry."
"Don't go through the woods," she warned.
"Mom, I have to take the shortcut or I'll be late."
"Brill, people have seen Dragators in the woods."
"I'll be careful."
He darted toward the forest path, but his heart pounded in his ears. He hated the spooky woods, but he dreaded Teacher Lorget's scolding more. Brill swallowed hard and began running through the forest. Soon he had to stop running to push the ferns and creepers apart so that he could squeeze through. He wished he had a sword to chop his way. Thorns scratched his bare legs and caught on his homespun brown tunic. A canopy of green leaves shut out the sunlight. Brill shivered in the damp cold. The wind whined through the trees. Or was that a Dragator howling? If only I had a sword, he thought. Brill imagined a Dragator appearing in the path ahead of him. He had never seen one, but he had heard stories. Dragators were half alligator and half dragon. They liked to lie partly underwater in the rivers, but they could chase their prey across land. They killed fast with their fiery breath, their poisonous fangs, and their knife-like teeth. He waved his imaginary sword in the air. If a Dragator dared to breathe on him, he'd chop off its head.
"Ah!"
Brill shrieked. He had run into a spider's web which clung to his face. He could feel invisible spiders running around on his bare skin. He brushed his face and curly brown hair with his hands. What if a big black spider had slipped under his tunic to bite him? Brill sighed. Why was he imagining killing Dragators when he was even afraid of spiders? The path was clearer now, and Brill again ran. Just as he came to the end of the woods, he could hear the school bell ringing. His breath came in ragged gasps, and his side ached. 2 brown horses stood in front of the soldiers' gray cart in the schoolyard. What were soldiers doing at school today? A hard knot formed in Brill's stomach. He was afraid of soldiers. They took people from their villages to serve the exalted emperor. Innocent people who were seldom heard of again. That's what had happened to his father. Should I go back home? I could pretend to be sick, Brill told himself. But he shuddered at the thought of what would happen if someone found him hiding from the emperor's soldiers. He took a deep breath and hurried toward the wooden schoolhouse. As he entered his room, Teacher Lorget looked up. "You're late."
I'm sorry, ma'am. One of our lambs was in trouble."
Brill cringed as he saw a stocky soldier glaring at him from the back of the room. The man wore bright yellow, which meant he was stationed on Palatial Island. Warriors wore olive green. The soldier snapped. "The Emperor expects promptness from all his subjects." The teacher surprised Brill by defending him. "Brill has an excellent record. I do not allow my pupils to be tardy without a good excuse. Soldier Algo." The soldier turned to Brill. "How old are you?"
12, sir."
"Come with me." Brill's heart hammered so loud, he wondered if the grim-faced soldier could hear it. Algo led Brill to a room where all the boys his age were receiving instructions from a tall, muscular soldier. Algo interrupted him to say, "Newfell, here's a latecomer." Newfell glared at Brill.
"Sit down,"
he ordered. Brill slipped into a seat by the wooden table. He took great gulps of air, hoping to slow down his pounding heart. Newfell passed out paper saying, "Do your best, boys." Brill realized it was a test, but he didn't have any idea what it was for. In 2 years' time, when he was 14, he'd take the career examination. Boys with high scores were appointed to government jobs. Those who scored low were left to farm the land. Brill had made up his mind to score low. His father was gone, his grandfather was old, and his mother couldn't run the farm by herself. Newful read the questions while the boys scratched their answers with goose quill pens. Horn inkwells stood in holes in the table. Brill wanted no part of government service, so he decided to write down the wrong answers.
"What is a rectangle?"
asked the soldier. Brill wrote,
"It's a mess where things are wrecked and tangled up." Question 2. What pumps blood into your body?
Your stomach. Brill decided if he spelled right, they might suspect he was faking his stupidity.
What is the greatest book in the Empire? The Life of Emain, the Exalted Emperor of Exitorn.
Brill decided he should give the expected answer here. He didn't want anyone to think that he was a rebel. Newful droned on.
What kind of trees grow from acorns?
Shoe trees. Brill grinned.
Add 7, 9, and 3.
Brill wrote 793.
What is the difference between a spider and an ant?
Spiders eat bugs and ants bug eaters. Brill put his hand over his mouth to muffle a laugh. He continued writing nonsensical answers until Newful had read the last question. The soldier collected the papers and said,
Boys, I'm going to tell you a secret. The student who does his best in this examination will go to the palace to be a companion to the crown prince.
A murmur of excitement rose from the other boys. Newful continued.
We are giving this test to every 12-year-old boy in the Empire. The Emperor does not want the search limited to only the highborn. He believes all should have an equal chance at honors.
That sounded good, but everyone knew the Emperor had killed all those of noble birth when he took over the country.
Newful said, You may go back to your room now. Good luck.
Pront, Brill's best friend, whispered as they walked down the corridor. I hope I get picked. I'd rather stay on the farm, said Brill. Don't you want to live in the palace? Brill shook his head. You're strange, Brill. When the boys returned to their room, Teacher Lorgette asked the class, How many of you can tell me how Emain became emperor? Every hand shot up. It was dangerous not to know the answer. She called on Brill. He stood and said, Emperor Emain was a poor man who wanted to help his people, so he gathered an army to overthrow nasty King Talder. The Emperor made life better for everyone in Exitorn. Brill sat down. He had recited what was expected, even though he knew that most of the people were much poorer now than when King Talder ruled. The only people who received good salaries were the gatherers who collected the crops, the army leaders, and the secret spies whose presence scared people so they didn't dare talk against the government. School was dismissed at 11 so the children could go home to help with the work. As they walked, they chattered about the test. Pront bragged. I think I answered all the questions right. I'm going to go home and pack. Grinseth wrinkled her nose. If you're going to the palace, you won't wear homespuns. You'll get silky, smooth clothes. I think it's unfair that only boys take the test. Pront laughed loudly. The prince wouldn't want a girl for his companion. Brill said, I don't know why you want to go to the palatial island. If you make the Emperor angry, he throws you in the moat and the Dragators eat you. Oh, Brill, he wouldn't do that to a boy, said Grinseth. Pront added, Only rebels get eaten by the Dragators. Are you a rebel? Brill felt a shiver of fear. Of course not. My father is serving the Emperor. Brill hoped his friends didn't detect the bitterness he had felt toward the Emperor for taking away his father when Brill was only 8. Brill's mother had received only one message from her husband. Soon after he left, he wrote that he had been assigned as a palace groundskeeper. One by one, Brill's friends left to go to their houses until Brill was alone. He hurried to the small stone cottage he shared with his mother and grandfather. He stepped inside where he could smell bread baking in the big stone fireplace. "How was school today, Brill?" asked Mother. Brill told her about the test. "But don't worry, Mother. I put down wrong answers so no one will think I'm smart enough to go work at the palace." He put his arm around her waist. "I don't want to leave you." Grandfather sat in a wooden chair near the fire, combing his gray beard.
King Talder built the schools to help boys and girls, but Emperor Amain has turned them into places where children are told over and over again how great Amain is.
Brill nodded. "It gets boring to keep talking and reading about the Emperor."
"When King Talder ruled our land, we knew he loved us and wanted us to be happy. King Amain only cares about his own comfort and pleasure."
"You mustn't say things like that," cried Mother. "The Emperor's spies are everywhere."
"I'm an old man. I'm ready to meet my God. I'm not afraid of that selfish oaf sitting on the throne."
"Father, I need you. Please don't get yourself arrested."
"The Holy Book says God will triumph over evil."
Mother pleaded. "You know it's forbidden to talk about the Holy Book."
"I know. The Emperor made us burn them. He was afraid people would read the Holy Book and realize how evil he is. When I see children growing up without God's laws to guide them, rage burns inside me."
Mother patted his shoulder. "There's nothing you can do to change things, Father. You're only one man."
"But I could tell people what the Holy Book said. I memorized many parts."
Brill was alarmed. "Grandfather, if you go around quoting the Holy Book, you'll be arrested."
Yes, I'll be arrested. But the Emperor only controls my mortal life. My soul belongs to God."
Mother took the bread from the fireplace. Brill could hardly wait for it to cool enough to slice. After he ate, Brill went out to do his jobs. He picked apples and plums from the orchard and gathered carrots, corn, and cabbage from the garden. At the end of the week, the Emperor's gatherers would come to pick up the fresh produce. Near the palace was a large city where people made fine clothes and beautiful furniture for the royal family. These workers had to be fed from the farms. The peasants were only allowed to keep enough food and wool for their own needs. When Brill crawled into bed that night, he couldn't sleep. Grandfather said God still loved the people of Exitorn, even though Amain had proclaimed that he was to be worshipped. "Please, God, take care of my father. Help him find some way to send a message to us. Watch over Mother. She works so hard. And don't let Grandfather be arrested." On Monday morning, Brill walked with his friends to school. Pront said, "I hope we'll hear who's going to the palace." Brill pointed out, "There are hundreds of villages and cities throughout the Empire, so there isn't much chance they'll pick someone from our little school." Pront shrugged. "You may be right, but when I'm 14, I'll do my best on the final test so I get a good assignment. Maybe I can be a palace guard." "Won't you be sorry to leave your family?" Brill asked. "Yes, but I'm never going to get rich on a farm." Grinseth laughed. "You'll never get rich working for the Emperor either. He keeps most of the wealth for himself." Pront cried, "Grinseth, are you a rebel?" "Course not." Grinseth's eyes reflected fear. "I just meant that the Emperor was the only one wise enough to handle the wealth of our country." Brill thought about how uncomfortable it was to have to be so careful of everything you said. As they came near the schoolhouse, they saw the gray cart parked in front. "Oh no, what's the soldier want now?" asked Brill. "Perhaps one of us been picked for the prince's companion," Pront said, and he broke into a run. Brill trudged on. He took deep breaths, trying to get rid of the queasy feeling that something terrible was about to happen. Grinseth watched him. "What's wrong, Brill?" "Nothing," he snapped. He wished he knew how to control the fear that swept over him when he saw the Emperor's soldiers. The school bell rang and the children hurried to their rooms. Teacher Lorgette stood in front of Brill's class. Boys and girls, Soldier Newfell has an important announcement.
Today is a great day for the village of Grebbing. Out of the thousands of boys in the Empire, a boy from your school has been chosen for a high position in our government.
The soldiers stopped a moment. The children leaned forward in their seats. The suspense was unbearable. Newfell pulled a paper from his pocket, unfolded it, and began to read.
By order of Amain, exalted Emperor of Exitorn, you are summoned to report immediately to the palace to serve as companion to Prince Grostair.
He looked at the class.
Who is the boy named Brill?
Brill felt fireballs exploding in his head. He stood clutching the table for support. The soldier handed him the paper with the Emperor's crest emblazoned in gold.
The summons is addressed to you, Brill.
Thank you, sir. Brill took the paper. His legs felt like jelly as he slumped to his seat. The class clapped. Soldier Newfell spoke.
We'll take you home to say goodbye. Then we're off to the palace. If we hurry, we can be there tomorrow night. You're a very lucky boy.
But Brill didn't feel lucky at all. I deliberately put the wrong answers on the test, he thought. The whole thing must be a terrible mistake. End of chapter 1.